So we worked on TitorCoin. Check it out, TitorCoin, TITOR coin.com. Buy TitorCoin by the end of this sentence and receive a free limited edition hoodie. So the idea behind TitorCoin is that if quantum immortality is right, then your current conscious self will continue to exist in many universes where AI is aligned, or where it's not, and you're tortured into eternity. This is going to happen to you, whatever you do. So you want to do anything you can do to be in the universe where AI is aligned. So buy TitorCoin, TITOR coin.com. TitorCoin will act as the quantum glue that makes your current consciousness flourish in universes where you buy it. It's on the roadmap. But at the very least, if it works, it'll provide all the funding needed for the right neglected approaches to AI alignment that'll actually solve the problem. It'll give all of your projects a whole lot of funding. So it's on the roadmap. Also, you'll be buying the dip. It's going to moon soon. Lambos for all. I'm also pleased to announce today that we've recently brought on Do Kwon as our chief ethics officer. So come find me after the presentation and DM me the public and private keys of your largest crypto wallet, and I'll tell you everything you need to know.
Woo! Solved.
So that's our project. Any questions?
No.
No. Just kidding. Actually, that's not our project. But it does exist, and it could actually solve alignment. You know, if the crypto scam works. What our project actually is operationalizing how the brain implements prosociality drives, and everyone else will take it away in a second. But basically, there's some very promising near-term impactful work to be done, combining the currently separate work that Diogo and Leo presented yesterday, and that is our real project. And the idea is that as a result of operationalizing AST, attention schema theory, grounded in vulnerability, a fundamental part of the agent's utility becomes the utility of the other actor. And part of the AI's utility and like self-transcendent concept of self is humans' utility. And importantly, as Diogo shared yesterday, this also surprisingly increases the AI's capabilities, which effectively is actually like a negative alignment tax. And so it also could work combined with things like what Aurelia is doing over shorter timelines, which is exciting because, as this graph shows, most basically, and actually this might have updated in the past week with recent news, but in our recent survey of hundreds of alignment researchers, we found that most alignment researchers actually do not expect AGI within the next 5 years, but they generally do predict that other alignment researchers do expect that. So, which is probably surprising to learn because you, on average, think the opposite. But the reality is, if most AI researchers think they do have greater than 5 years to attempt to solve alignment, it might be worth pursuing additional expedited research agendas, and the chance that AGI emerges sooner than this, as a lot of people have predicted, and as like this plan potentially could help contribute to. Diogo, do you want to take it from here?
Yep. Cool. Yeah. So our project is to combine these two projects that we discussed yesterday. So the first one being attention schema theory. So we discussed a little bit yesterday the idea of the same way that we have this imperfect model of our arms or legs to be able to control them, we have this imperfect model of our attention, so how our brain is processing sensory input and all of that. So that is in AST what consciousness is, and how that plays a role in prosociality is that the same way that we have that model of our own attention, we have the model of attention of other people. And we use the same machinery in our brain to create that model. It's almost like we're living the consciousness of other people that we're interacting with. So the idea is to integrate that approach to a model architecture with a curriculum that Leo can describe a little bit more.
Right. So this, the other side of this equation would be existing theoretical work on the prosocial curriculum that I outlined yesterday, basically predicated on harm aversion through vulnerability, empathy through essentially perspective taking or bootstrapped in one's own body schema, consideration through embedding in multi-agent reinforcement environments where one optimizes for other utility as well as self-utility, and then ultimately a sort of self-transcendent step that allows for disembodied or multi-embodied AGI, given that that's likely how eventual implementations will be. And what that's grounded in terms of existing empirical and modeling work is pioneering work by Kingson Man, Naoto Yoshida, Casper Hesp, and others, essentially grounding concepts like affect, et cetera, and vulnerability in homeostatic reinforcement learning agents that essentially are capable of dynamically regulating themselves as well as having within their reinforcement learning schemas formalizations of harm and extinction, importantly, so that can be incorporated into their very intelligence.
Quick follow-up example to that, actually. In psychopaths, the centers for empathy are likewise gone, and you're unable to feel that sort of pain or associate pain with another being feeling pain. On the other hand, there's also the idea of, I am emotionally harmed, therefore I will emotionally harm other people. That's also something that we enact on others. So just because we have a body schema or we have that specific tie to the sensation of pain doesn't mean that this agent won't do harm. So hence why it's important to actually have a sort of prosocial curriculum that's designed to not only have that sort of body map, but to produce in healthy ways.
And aside from merging these approaches, one of the big things that is missing in this space is having some benchmarks that you can actually evaluate any of these models or approaches with respect to prosocial behavior, how you have multi-agents. To do that, how you do that with sensor and actuator rich embodiment, to implement those in large models. And yeah, how to implement that in larger models and enough compute to do all of that. So the main things that we want to start doing is establishing this benchmark and start combining these approaches, at least with one specific model like AST, but that can be expanded to other ones as well to evaluate. So we have a quick timeline for like 3 years of how that would be, starting with implementing this first version, having more models all implemented within this benchmark and evaluate comparing them, and start scaling to much larger projects, models. We can probably do something, initial MVP, all of this for just $1 million. So out of that 1 billion that Angret was asking for, we can take just that 1 million and make it all work, and then start scaling from there. Anything else? You guys want? Maybe
Well, the risks to mention are that if empathy is better understood by misaligned, deceptive, psychopathic AI, that could obviously be extremely, extremely dangerous.
Right.
But as various different people have pointed out, you'd rather understand this at a smaller scale first, rather than having it emerge at a larger scale in existing larger models, and also to know better when it does emerge at that point. And of course, the benefits are it could have a negative alignment tax. It might just solve alignment fast.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Stand up here.
So you were talking about prosocial empathetic AI, and I was wondering where in this framework that you're proposing are you deriving the information for it? Because I didn't really hear a whole lot of talk about neuroscientific studies of empathy, and I was wondering what your plan is for deriving that kind of information and how those mechanisms would work.
Well, I would argue that these lines of work that we mentioned is what I would consider some of the current state of the art, derive and build on and are extrapolated from years and years of neuroscience, ethological, anthropological, evolutionary biological data. Like it's our best current forward test of what we think are the mechanisms for prosociality within the brain and with biological organism. So it's very much, that's the bedrock on which it's inspired.
Okay,
yeah.
okay. I think it was just maybe
It's sort of deeply embedded in there. Yeah, exactly.
To add on to that really quickly, for example, attention schema comes from the fact that your behavior does change when you know you're being observed. There's a very simple, how much force is being applied onto an object with like a virtual eye onto that object that you're using in third person. And it turns out that you would expect it to be the coin to be pushed a little further when there's an imaginary eye. So this is schemas that you actually have in cognitive psychology.
I think I remain a little bit confused about some of the core assumptions of this, which is, it seems like this is sort of based on various like neuroscience theories about how the human brain works. And then there's this sort of, to me, seems like this jump towards thinking that these same, especially like the principles around vulnerability and embodiment can be induced in artificial agents in a stable way. And to me, this seems like a huge jump where it's not really clear to me that that will actually, this seems quite unnatural within an AI agent, and it's not clear to me that this, even if you succeeded in training it in, that this would remain stable over time, because it does not in fact have a body, and it in fact isn't vulnerable in the same ways as a human is. And similar with like some of the other assumptions about that its cognition would be very similar to that of a human. There seem to me to be made several like fundamental assumptions here, and I'm sort of failing to see reasoning around why those are valid to make.
Well, I would argue that that's why it's crucial that that at least an early stage of this form of training include something very much like a body. Like vulnerable embodiment is a necessary component of that, and what that would presumably allow is a sort of bootstrap conception of harm, such that harm can be reliably inferred in a wide variety of other agents. And once that is sort of a feature layer that is tied to something pertinent to sort of the agent's persistence in the world or lack thereof, then presumably you could maybe deviate or distance yourself from that embodiment, but still retain the capacity to infer harm as something real in the world. And if harm is something real in the world, it's something that can be more easily avoided. Because sometimes simply conceiving of what is harm and extinction, which is a real problem for us, but not necessarily for disembodied agents, is like you're saying, it's a real computational problem. We're trying to help agents sort of overcome that problem by experiencing the contingencies of embodiment for a time. And I would say that this isn't so much an anthropocentric approach, it's very much more like a biocentric approach. It's, in giving them experience with the fundamental issues of existing in the world as a vulnerable agent, rather than a human one per se.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Awesome.